20 men charged in ISIS's deadly attack on Paris in 2015 go on trial today. 6 years ago, multiple gunmen and suicide bombers attacked a soccer stadium, a concert hall, and restaurants and cafes, killing 130 people. A special courtroom was built for the trial. It includes a high-security witness box for the only surviving suspect accused of carrying out the actual attack. Elaine Cobbe is in Paris, and she joins us now to talk about this. Elaine, you and I covered this story back when it happened. It's been nearly 6 years since the attack. Remind our viewers exactly what took place.
It was November 13th. It was nighttime. People were out enjoying dinner. They were going to a concert. They were going to the stadium. And next thing, everyone was texting each other going, "What's happening? I heard there was an attack on a stadium. What's happening? I heard there was an attack on a concert hall. No, it's a restaurant. No, it's this." And then we realized it's all of them. So in a concerted attack, a team of 10 attacked the Stade de France football stadium, where the two who were trying to get in did not get in. The guards on the doors there, on the gates, were in high security mode because President François Hollande, who was president at the time, was inside. They did not get inside. But at the Bataclan concert hall, they got in. They killed 80 people that night, opening fire with automatic weapons, setting off bombs, and they held people hostage for hours in a standoff. Another two teams were down on streets in eastern Paris where they attacked several cafes and restaurants. There were scenes of mayhem there, people who were there describing the horror, diving underneath restaurant tables as they heard gunfire, not sure what was going on. And it was several hours before people really understood that, yes, indeed, there had been 3 separate waves of attacks across the French capital.
So let's talk about the trial that's starting today. Who's facing charges? Because a number of the suspects didn't survive, as I understand it. So how is this expected to unfold?
There are 20 accused at this trial, 14 of them in the courthouse. 6 are still subject to international arrest warrants and have not been found. Among them is Salah Abdeslam, who is believed to be the only surviving member of the 10-member cell who carried out the attacks that killed 130 people and injured more than 350 others. So he is charged with murder, and he and the 13 others in court were there today to hear the charges brought against them. One of those not in court is Oussama Attar, who is believed to have been the mastermind who pulled it all together, found the people, and then recruited the others, who face a range of charges from terrorist conspiracy to aiding and abetting, to providing financial or material support, finding weapons, finding cars. And they are there in court today at the start of what will be a 9-month long trial. And they face prison sentences of up to life.
Elaine, there are around 1,800 civil plaintiffs in this case. What security measures is the court taking amid the trial? What can you tell us about what we'll see or what you'll see?
The entire area is closed to anyone who does not have a pass, a badge, or recognized reason to be in the courthouse. And within the Palais de Justice courthouse complex, which is an old 13th century building, there is a specially constructed courtroom with very high security. And to access there, you have to be a lawyer involved in the case, a witness, or an accused, or a journalist accredited. Or there are very few places for anybody outside of those categories, and anyone who's in the court area for anything else is not allowed anywhere near it. There's very high security also for the transfer of the accused. They arrived this morning before the trial opened. High security convoys coming through Paris from the various prisons, including Fleury-Mérogis, which is the highest security prison in France and the biggest prison in Europe. And that's where Salah Abdeslam is held in isolation. So he was brought in early this morning. When asked to give his name, he in fact said he took that moment to give a little declaration. He said, "There is no other God than Allah," and he said, "I have given up all pretense of work to serve the Islamic State." So he set his credentials very clearly at the start.
Wow. 6 years. I know, we've been talking about 20 years now for, the alleged mastermind behind the 9/11 attack, now just going to some pre-trial. But 6 years is quite a long time. Why is it taking so long to get to trial?
Well, at first there was the ongoing attacks here and the realization that gradually investigators worked out that there were links between those who carried out the attacks in Paris, those who then carried out the attacks in Brussels the following year, and others who were carrying out smaller attacks. And so this was a huge network that had links with Iraq, with Syria, with hardcore groups in Belgium, with radicalized groups across France. And the Islamic State was much stronger, of course, at the time. So they got many people out, those who had been helping. And it took quite a while to pull together all those links and to get an idea of just how widespread this network was. There was also then the issue of, 9 of the 10 believed to have carried out the attacks were killed. So it was a case of then working backwards without anything from them. Salah Abdeslam himself hasn't said an awful lot to investigators during his time since he was arrested outside Brussels in 2016. Then, of course, it took 2 years to pull together the actual trial ideas, the construction of the courthouse, working out exactly how this would happen. It's lasting 9 months. There will be, for example, for 5 whole weeks, we'll hear from the victims and families of the victims and the survivors. So that will take a chunk of time. And then, of course, COVID, because that delayed it again by several months.
Elaine, before we let you go, I just want to ask you about something that it certainly affected me when we were covering the aftermath of this terrorist attack. I spent a third of my life living in Paris, and Paris is your home. How did it change French society overall? And have any of the, we also reported on some of the situations that perhaps led to this terrorist attack in France. Have you seen any marked changes in the way political leaders address some of the tensions that exist in some of these banlieues, for example? And how has French society overall changed?
Well, at the time, everyone was so hugely affected by the attacks because although Paris in particular has been the scene of other attacks, and there wasn't this huge concerted, very well organized wave of attacks that really put the word terror in terrorist, because everyone was then jittery for quite some time afterwards. And the fact that ISIS kept saying, "We can get you anytime, anywhere," didn't help and reassure anybody. Things that have changed since involve partly a lot of increased security, partly a much beefed up service of surveillance. There were criticisms that some of those on the watch list were involved, and why weren't they found earlier? But the police were saying, well, honestly, there are so many people on the watch list and it's hard to know who's actually going to do something. So there have been political changes in the sense that there's a lot less tolerance on some levels of when something happens. When there have been some of the so-called lone wolf attacks inspired by ISIS, the police cracked down very quickly. It's like, let's end this now. And there have also been many more programs to try to de-radicalize, particularly young people, or to try to address some of the issues that where young people say they're not heard, they don't feel part of French society. Those are longer term issues, frankly, and not easy to change. And French people today are still very aware that ISIS hasn't gone away And so there's still always this sense, if someone has walked away from suitcases, if people are gathering somewhere and looking a little suspicious, people are far more aware, even now, 6 years later, and they're more likely to say, do you see that? What do we think? Is this okay?
Elaine Cobbe, thank you very much.